My parents kicked me out to let my golden sister live there, even though I bought the house. Imagine buying your parents' home to give them peace, only to be kicked out so your spoiled sister could take your place. What would you do if the people you loved most betrayed you like that? For as long as I can remember, my parents' house was the one place I felt safe. It wasn't big, but it was filled with memories, Christmas mornings, birthday parties, quiet evenings with nothing but laughter and the hum of the TV. That house wasn't just bricks and walls. It was home. When I got my first job after college, I started saving. My parents were behind on the mortgage, and I knew they were too proud to ask for help. So I made them an offer. I would buy the house, pay everything off, and they could live there peacefully for the rest of their lives. They cried when I told them, said they were proud of me. We signed the papers. The deed was in my name. I didn't do it for control. I did it out of love. I moved in, helped with groceries, made repairs, and finally renovated the kitchen like Mom had always dreamed of. At first, it was everything I hoped for. Mom cooked again. Dad started planting tomatoes in the backyard. We ate together at night, talked like we hadn't in years. For the first time in a long time, it felt like we were all healing, becoming something stronger than before. Then Grace came back. My little sister, the golden child. The one who never stayed anywhere too long and somehow always came home with excuses and open arms waiting for her. She showed up without warning, suitcase in hand, saying she needed to reset her life. My parents welcomed her instantly. No questions, no hesitation. Suddenly, I didn't hear thank you anymore. Every conversation turned into something about Grace. My opinions were dismissed. My space became smaller. They acted like she had returned to save the family, not to live off it. I thought helping them would bring us closer. Instead, I began to feel like a stranger in the house I owned. Grace moved into her old room the same night she arrived. No one asked if I was okay with it. No one talked to me about boundaries or space. She just took over, like everything had been waiting for her. And my parents acted like the house was still theirs, like I was just visiting. She started making changes right away. Took over the bathroom we all shared. Left dishes in the sink. Invited friends over without asking. When I mentioned it, my mom brushed it off with a smile. She's just finding her footing again. Give her time. I gave her time. But things kept getting worse. My dad gave her the car I had helped them repair last year. Just handed her the keys like it was nothing. Grace didn't work, didn't clean, didn't contribute. But somehow, she was the one getting everything handed to her. I was paying the mortgage, but I felt like a guest. One afternoon, I came home early and found Grace arguing with someone on the phone in the living room. I tried to pass by quietly, but she turned to me and snapped, "Do you mind?" Like I was intruding in her space. I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was surreal. That night, I brought it up at dinner. Told my parents I was feeling pushed aside in my own home. My mom looked offended. My dad said I was being dramatic. "She's going through a hard time," he said. "You need to be patient." I stared at them in disbelief. I had been patient for years. Eventually, she brought her boyfriend over. He stayed a weekend. Then a week. No one asked me if it was okay. No one acknowledged that this was my house. Grace laughed when I finally said something. "Lighten up, Aaron. We're family. It's not like you pay rent here." She knew exactly what she was doing. My parents laughed with her, as if I was the unreasonable one, as if all the effort, all the sacrifices I had made meant nothing. I felt small, invisible. I started staying later at work just to avoid being home, because it no longer felt like home. I didn't realize it at the time, but my own house was slipping away from me, and I was letting it happen. It was a Saturday morning when everything broke. I had planned to sleep in after a long week at work, but I woke up to the sound of Grace and her boyfriend blasting music in the living room. I stepped out, groggy, and asked them to lower the volume. Grace rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. Her boyfriend smirked and said, "Maybe you should get some noise-canceling headphones, man." That was the moment I snapped. I told him to get out. I told Grace this wasn't a college dorm, and that I wouldn't keep living like a stranger in my own house. The room fell silent. She stared at me coldly. Later that day, my parents called a family meeting. We sat in the kitchen like we used to when I was a kid. Only this time, I wasn't the son they were proud of. I was the problem to be handled. My mom started with that tone she used when she was about to say something cruel but act like it was kind. "We've been thinking, Aaron," she said. "This isn't working. You're tense all the time, and Grace doesn't feel welcome. Maybe it's best if you take a break. Stay somewhere else for a while, just until things calm down." I blinked, trying to process what I had just heard. They were asking me to leave. I looked at my dad, hoping he would say something to stop this madness. He didn't. He nodded slowly and added, "You've done enough. Maybe a little distance would help everyone." I laughed bitterly. "You want me to move out of my own house so Grace and her boyfriend can live here in peace?" No one answered. My mom looked away. My dad stayed silent. Grace was upstairs, probably listening. She always knew she could get whatever she wanted. And now she had my home. The one I had worked for, paid for, built from sacrifice. And they didn't even have the decency to be ashamed. That night, I packed a bag and left. Not because I agreed. Not because they were right. But because I couldn't stand to be there one more second. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and the worst part, they acted like it was the most normal thing in the world. I stayed on a friend's couch for a week. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. I couldn't. The shame was too fresh. Every time I thought about it, I felt like I had failed. But deep down, I also knew something had shifted. I was done being quiet. Done being stepped on in a house I owned. One night, I pulled out the deed and stared at it. My name. My signature. My money. Everything about that house legally belonged to me. And yet, somehow, I had been made to feel like a trespasser in it. That's when I knew I had a choice. Either I stayed silent, or I took it back. I called a lawyer the next day. Explained the situation in detail. He was stunned at first, but then he got to work. Within days, I had everything I needed. The paperwork. The legal notices. The steps required to formally evict them. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my life back. The first notice arrived on a Monday. I wasn't there to see it, but I heard from a neighbor that my mom burst into tears when she opened it. Grace, of course, called me screaming. Said I was cruel. Said I was tearing the family apart. I didn't answer. I owed her nothing. My dad left a voicemail. Said I was acting like a stranger. Said they didn't raise me to be so heartless. I laughed at that, because the truth was, they didn't raise me at all. Not once did they defend me. Not once did they protect me from the damage Grace brought into our home. Weeks passed. More legal steps were taken. More silence from their side. I heard they tried to contest the eviction, but the deed was airtight. Eventually, they realized they had no ground to stand on. And slowly, the panic set in. Because for the first time, I wasn't backing down. I wasn't coming back to be their son. I wasn't coming back to apologize. I was coming back as the legal owner of the house they used against me. And this time, I wouldn't let them rewrite the rules. The day I returned to the house was colder than usual. Not just the weather, but the silence. The driveway was empty. Grace's car was gone. I walked up the front steps with the keys in my hand, the same keys I had held the day I signed the papers. Only this time, everything felt different. I opened the door and stepped inside. The living room was quiet. Boxes sat near the walls, half packed. My mom stood in the kitchen, arms crossed. She looked smaller than I remembered. My dad was sitting at the table, his face blank. Grace was nowhere to be seen. I assumed she had already left. Nobody said anything at first. Just silence. I walked past them, heart pounding, and into my old room. It was untouched, just like I had left it. That alone almost made me break, but I held it together. I had come too far to collapse now. I stood tall and reminded myself that I belonged here. After a long pause, my dad finally spoke. "You didn't have to do this, Aaron. We could have talked." I turned to him calmly. "I did try to talk. You didn't listen. You chose her over me. In a house I paid for." My mother shook her head. She needed help. I nodded. And I didn't? They didn't respond. I could see it in their eyes. They still didn't get it. They saw Grace as the victim, and me as the one who ruined everything. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was tired. Tired of begging to be treated with respect. Tired of justifying my existence in my own home. A few days later, they moved out. Quietly, no goodbye, no note, no apology. Just gone. I walked through every room that night alone, absorbing the silence. For the first time in years, the house felt like it belonged to me. Not because I won, but because I finally stopped losing. Some lessons only come when the silence grows louder than the lies. And when it does, you either crumble under it or you claim what's always been yours. It's been months since they left. The house is quieter now, but it breathes easier. I painted the walls, replaced the curtains, donated old furniture. With every change, I felt lighter. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming space, about turning a place of pain into a place of peace. I don't talk to Grace anymore. I don't talk to my parents either. Sometimes I wonder if they think about me, if they sit around a table and mention my name, if they regret anything. But I've stopped waiting for that moment, because peace isn't about getting answers. It's about moving forward without needing them. People always say family is everything, but I've learned that family without respect is just emotional blackmail. They taught me how to be silent, how to shrink myself, and in the end, they taught me something even more important, that walking away doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. Now, I have a new circle. Friends who show up. People who listen. A quiet joy in small things. Mornings with coffee on the porch. Nights with laughter that doesn't come at my expense. It's not flashy, but it's mine. Built not on obligation, but on mutual care. I used to ache when I thought about what I lost. Now, I smile when I see what I've built. The house is still here. But the boy who gave up everything to be accepted? He's not. In his place stands a man who knows his worth and no longer apologizes for claiming it. Maybe one day they'll call. Maybe they'll say they were wrong. But even if they don't, I'm okay. Because healing isn't about who says sorry. It's about choosing yourself, again and again, until it no longer hurts. And you, what would you have done? If your own family forced you out of the home you paid for, would you forgive them? Or would you do what I did and take it all back?